It affects us in really bad ways. And that's what I want to do with the show, is pull back the curtain on how the media affects us all, and it's everywhere. Advertisements. It's the realtor that's got his face on the bench at the bus stop. It's everywhere. Newspapers, radio, television, internet, gas station TV. You can't get away from it. I want to try to get a message out doing that work. For my career, I'm a retired Air Force guy, 20 years, 13 years overseas, a couple of war zones. I owned a business for a while. So I had to think about messaging from that respect. What did I want my business to say when we're putting our message out? Was a job creator for a little while. I also got really involved in messaging, working for National District of the Blind for about 10 and a half years, and how we wanted to be perceived as an organization. Did a lot of traveling with them, so how we're getting the message out to a large number of people in a lot of different places. Most recently, I spent a lot of years being a veteran service officer. Again, a lot of that is how you get out into the community, how you get the community to understand what it is that you want to say. So a lot of different kinds of backgrounds in that specific kind of an area. Even dealing with things like a veteran eventually winding up in a VA National Cemetery. So that's the reason I'm here, is to try to talk about how the media affects us and all the various ways that it's going to do that. And we're going to talk about everything from the history of media and what they did then, and how it's changing very dramatically now, and perhaps even taking over larger and larger bits of our life. So Matt, that's why I'm here. Why are you here?
Well, I do a lot with online media, a lot of things in the community. I've run for office. I've also done festivals. A lot of non-profit charity work, and a lot of these different types of aspects that I do things in the community require that I'm online, and so I have 14 different Facebooks. I have many other type of online social media. I have 13, 14 emails, and so I deal with a lot of the disruptive people that like to, what I would consider to be predatory, or people that influence. Like, have you ever had a moment where you've mentioned something online, and here's one just horrible example. We have a media outlet spreading those messages are for profit. In future episodes, we'll explore which media outlets are purposely focused on creating hatred and division, and which media outlets teach you to hate and fear and blame other American citizens for your problems. For example, some media outlets try to convince you to be angry that transgender people, citizens, are a huge problem in your life, even though it's very likely that no transgender American has ever personally caused you any problems.
Can I interject for on that? So Matt asked me in advance and I forgot to do it, but Asher, who will be our sort of regular on-screen co-host, is probably more familiar with the message today. So Matt may do a little more reading of the material than Asher did.
But as people know, that you have to get word out. A lot of messaging. You often have other people that interject. Always seem like they're what they say they are.
Okay. Any other ingredients in what you want to be here for?
Well, I know that we had talked about some conversations with the three of us in the meeting, and so some of the topics I think I'd like to add to.
Oh, that's fine. So in future episodes of the show, Matt is going to be here on a regular what he's probably going to do is sort of more of the behind-scenes stuff. He's going to load the graphics onto the television screens for us, whether that's websites or some kind of a graphic. I particularly really like pie charts, so we might do a pie chart of the different kinds of a purpose. So let's just give an example. The war, paying and then creating those kinds of media stories or visual website we're going to try to explore why all those things are done and who's doing them. We're going to go behind the curtain and figure out who the corporations are that are paying the money to have things done. Some of that will be very positive and some of that will be very negative, just like the campaigns that those media organizations are creating. Millions of us, probably all of us, are exposed to all kinds of all day long. Put it so it doesn't ring or tickle me about something while I'm trying to do this on camera. I think today Americans are reading and watching much more media probably than they ever used to. And I'm probably jumping ahead a little bit here, but for example, when my grandfather, who was a very busy person with a full-time job and 5 kids and a house to manage and being a commander of American Legion Post, when he took time to do media, consume free press, and that was his main media. He may have had to newspapers and radio sheets, and now my son, in addition to all those. So Matt, tell the audience why we're doing a show about the media.
Well, I think that control of what we have in media is not like what it was before. We used to have just a few channels and some very specific people that we would try. So we could be the fourth rail in our country and our democracy. And so we were able to maybe monitor the media, the government. And so in a way, media has changed very rapidly, and it's just not what John and I remember when we were kids, when we had people like Walter Cronkite, people that you didn't even know what their political background might be. It would just be supposition or a guess. And these people that we've talked about this change during the Reagan equal voice all the time, fairly something is one-sided, we'll make mention, but we'll have 2 perspectives on those things.
Sure. And what Matt's alluding to is I think there's a danger in the format of what we're trying to do here that we could come off as being one side or the other, and we definitely don't want to do that. I mean, obviously we are both activists and we're both citizens and we're both voters of those things, but we don't want them to really steer the focus. The citizens of America with the understanding that there's some media out there that want to coerce you to have a belief. They want to use propaganda on you to steer your belief, emotions for their own benefit, or perhaps more specifically, not the benefit of the media source for the usage of their airtime or their answer things. Not only your emotions and your fears, like we talked about already, but it absolutely can affect your purchasing habits. Just as a good example, when Matt and I pulled up into the parking lot, I'm in an SUV and he's in a truck. He needs a truck for his work. I don't need an SUV. I bought an SUV because my wife told me to, because we need something to haul stuff. Which
it's, you know, you get inundated with so many things. It's so often line and then immediately when we were trying to change the name of the festival, we had mentioned a few different names, and so I was seeking a few different ones online, and we ended up going with a specific name that's the Heart of Oak Fest. But one of my searches were the Heart of Oakland Fest, and just today I was threatened by somebody on my phone in a text that they're going to sell my name out from underneath me because I didn't reserve the Oakland Fest. And so it's not even the name of the festival that we're using, but it had been mentioned online, and so it's been tracked. And so I keep getting solicited for it over and over. I think you had a similar circumstance with the show name, didn't you?
Yeah, it's actually completely relevant. I decided that I wanted to do this and approached Asher, and well, actually they approached me, but I think I came up with the idea of actually creating a limited liability corporation and having a website, a Facebook page, maybe an Instagram account. Anyway, I thought I pulled back the curtain, but that was actually taken by a company in the curtain industry. So a lot more searching on Google. Eventually we settled on Behind the Curtain, which was actually Matt's idea. He wanted to be shorter, so it's easier to...
a logo, yeah.
Sort of rolls off the tongue easier.
Yeah.
In addition to that, everybody's driving an SUV these days. Nobody drives sedans anymore. Well, we didn't just decide we wanted to buy SUVs. The giant corporations that make more profits selling SUVs created media campaigns that convinced us we need to all be driving them. It's just like you probably didn't just decide to shop on Amazon or to shop at Walmart or to shop on Temu. Those advertisements have convinced you how to behave, what decisions to make, how to take action. Know how long this term is really existed. If you're like me, and I'm 60 years old, this idea of time kind of time passage, time just flies by. You look up and
I'm a perfect example of that. Doing the different things from page to page. So it's almost unhealthy how much I go back and forth from page to page because I'm just trying to keep up with this. It's almost like a drug to some extent. It's like you can get what you want and you can select everything and available for you, and you can get that just at a moment's notice. Having different pages that deal in different subjects, it can easily move to another, but unfortunately that is a case with me because there's a lot of my pages are business oriented and I need to be on them, but it's interesting how the algorithms are brought to you on these different aspects of social media that they appeal to your sense, and I'm not sure that it's based on Google also, like what your buying habits are or what the algorithm is that's compiled, but I think that each and all of us probably have a profile that we're rated on certain aspects that is the reason that certain advertisers or certain people are sent to us, in addition to having the word searches and the things that we say online.
So I'm going to get back on track a little bit. So the structure of the episodes going forward today is basically just an introduction to what we're trying to do. But episodes in the future are going to have a main theme for each episode. For example, we might have a main theme in the media in general. So we'll be talking about who are the biggest media corporations, mergers and acquisitions in media corporations, who's the biggest funder. For example, somebody just bought Time Warner Cable. Imagine how massive the overarching corporation of Time Warner Cable is, and now that's a subsidiary of somebody else. We're going to get into that later in mergers and acquisitions. It's further in the script for today. What do you want to talk about in your main themes?
Well, I think that I think today it's really important that because Asher is going to be one of the main hosts, is that how are we going to structure the show? Expect to see each time that we have a show. I'd like to know when I'm watching a show, especially you see like Apple, they have specific different parts of the episode that you can watch and pick as your favorites. So I'm curious of what are the main themes that we're going to have in the show, and so I guess we'll.
There's going to be probably at least a dozen sort of major themes. So Matt and I are both active in the local community. I'm particularly interested in trying to get young Americans out to vote. So one of the main theme that will dominate a whole episode will be sort of the larger federal government. Do we need to focus on that as a nation and trying to get that under control? That might be in the Israel-Hamas war or the Ukraine-Russia war, or why were we recently doing some military activities in Syria? We'll talk maybe about taxation, talk about some of the issues in the media today that are really emotionally challenging. Going on in Arizona, they recently passed, and now it looks about it affecting the federal government will be a huge category.
Well, this sounds like these are ongoing categories. So it'll be updated from show to show. A lot of these are current events, but they sound like they may be of interest and like ongoing.
Sure. Well, and Matt likes to bring me. I have a tendency to get off track, so Matt tends to bring me a giant category. We're going to call that a main theme. So a whole episode would be about the federal government, and there's probably some other ones would be corporations behind the media. It's a giant overarching theme for future media that causes challenging emotions and fear. That's another giant main theme. The history of the media, where it came from, where it was in the middle, and where it is today. And thinking about some kinds of media. Matt and I were talking the other day about, you look at the period right around when our country was being formed and what Benjamin Franklin was up to. He actually created a media company so that he could use predominantly print media back then. That was all they had. I mean, he may have made speeches, but he printed leaflets and pamphlets and sent those out as widely as he could. And I wonder, was he thinking about his distributing his media when he created the post office? I mean, I wonder where the links are, and we're going to explore things like that in future episodes.
Like Hitler Radio or like Twitter, where you can go directly to the source. And it's asking a consumer to buy into the persona of the person. And why is it, it's kind of like Trump with Twitter. It's like people go to him for news as opposed to seeking out media because he's discredited And I think maybe like when you talk about Ben Franklin, it's like buying your own media. You can project outwards your own ideology.
Matt and I had a planning session yesterday, and on it, but it's going to be a huge thing that we talk about, and that is, I think maybe perhaps a fairly new development in the media last couple of decades, and that's what my spouse calls infotainment. The program you watch may call itself news. You really like that newscaster. My mother is quite elderly, running local. She's been doing it for longer and and we're probably of how habits play into the kinds of media corporations create their campaigns. They have actuaries and bean counters, statistical analysis. They know what our habits are, and they know how to manipulate us inside our habits. Am I saying that right?
Oh, yeah. And I think a little bit like when you describe your grandmother, these people become your friends almost. This is screen. And screen that we watch, laptop and phones, I think that the media are very different. So sometime during this episode, I think we should.
I actually had a strange idea today, like an hour before we started this process. A couple of decades, I keep finding myself asking people, I like to do conversation starters. What do you think the next thing our phones are going to take over so that we don't need it anymore? Like, I'm wearing a wristwatch, but this isn't just, all it does is tell the time in the day. It doesn't have a calculator or internet. It's my address book. It's my email. It's my text messaging system. It's taken over all of those things. It's where I check the weather. The thought I had this morning was, how long is it going to be until we don't need televisions in our house anymore because we hit a button on our phone and it projects a TV screen up onto a blank part of a wall? Do you think the phone someday will actually kill like Samsung televisions?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a little silly, but I'm writing a novel where it's in your hand, so it's a part of your body. You know, that's the projection I see. Is that even if I would even go so far to say that we actually don't see an image, it's just our brain perceiving. At some point, it might be part of us, and we perceive that we're seeing something, and attaining information that way. But that's projection in the future. But
yeah, but if you're watching the Super Bowl and you're drinking, you don't want to have it in your hand. You want,
the Super Bowl in your head.
You want a big projection on the wall. So.
Yeah, I want wings in my head, not the Super Bowl.
Overarching theme is going to be the culture wars.
Yeah.
It's fetus. They're trying to eliminate the morning after pill, gun control, banning gender rights. Just as a quick sidebar, under the culture wars, I have a friend who lives in the middle of nowhere in Iowa. But one of the things he's the most passionate in California, if they can't get good medical care, he probably doesn't know any transgender Americans because he lives in nowhere in Iowa. He lives in California. Not his personal care situation. I asked him why so personal to him, and the pay them to air the media campaigns, trying to get you to care about what they care about, that corporation behind the media. The media corporation probably doesn't really care about it. They're in it to make profit. Somebody comes to them and says, we want you to air this story, and they do have their bean counters decide if they can make any money selling advertising. But to us, it creates the
episodes on how the media both cover and steer these issues, and we'll cover how the media creates danger in our society, and how the media divides our nation, creates and nurtures wedge issues, and how the media foments.
The theme is going to be all the various different types of media. Media. I mean, there's a few big categories: print media, things that are on paper, radio, television. There are hundreds or thousands or millions. One I've been thinking a lot lately, going back to cell phones again, is the category of media type called out of your house media. It's still a pretty big category, but I think maybe for a while, valuable ones. Billboards on the highway, advertisement for businesses on the sides of their trucks. I mentioned a little while ago, bus stop ads, subway ads, all those kind of things. Things that you only see when you're outside your house. And what I'm wondering lately is, maybe are those kinds of media sources seeing maybe a resurgence of the value that they contain? Because now, if you're going down the highway and you have someone sitting next to you and you pass a van that's got a service that you need, like you want to get your roof replaced or need a plumber or you want to have a tree stump removed, you can just say, hey, Matt, take a picture of that. He's already got a cell phone in his hand. I mean, I know it. It's right there.
I see it every day with, I have an ad on the side of my truck for a business, snap off a picture. You almost want to run outside, but
right.
but that type of media it holds value. It has outreach. So.
Yeah, I'm wondering if they're more valuable now because of the cell phone. In the old days, if you wanted to make use of that ad, you needed to have a pen and some kind of paper to write that phone number or that business name down on, and now you don't have to do that anymore. It's just
discussing the impact of these different types of media.
Quickly, we'll save that for future episodes, but just as an example, within the category of broadcast media, television specifically, think about all the changes in the way television has been altered in ABC and some sort of local channel, and TV was on from like 6 in the morning till about midnight, and then there was no TV. Now, not only is TV 24/7, which we don't have anymore, the channels went all the way into like the 4000s, and up there you could music play on your TV all day long. But now, that sort of broadcast, I just use Comcast as an example because I had Comcast cable for a long time. That's not the big driver anymore. People don't see it anymore. Now, you do it on demand, which you can do through your cable provider, or you subscribe. Hulu or Netflix or Paramount Plus, or you have something like I have now. When I got rid of Comcast, I converted to a Roku Fire Stick. But that's basically all on demand now. You can pick whatever you want. If you want to binge the entire series of Friends, 90s when they came out, you can only watch a half an hour of it a week. The times, they are changing. How long has it been a corporation in the world has an internet presence? How long has it been since you could order on the internet, but you had to go to 20 different, for example, something Amazon, and order everything you want? I mean, instead of having your credit card number in there, you just enter your account number and
Mass media. This huge category includes TV, radio, and movies. Episodes will talk about how these different they're changing and where we might go on in the future. One idea I had leads to a ton of questions. This is some of Asher's notes here. Will we move into the future without television? In the future, will we do everything on our phone? Oh, you already did this part.
I did that part.
Okay. I apologize. I guess we need to cut that. So.
Matt and I have known each other a long time, so we're passionate about
it
something.
says Matt there. Where are we at then in this here?
Just a quick list.
Okay, so we'll go from here.
We might talk about Citizens United, the decision in the Supreme Court that said that corporations are people. I don't know if you remember seeing Mitt Romney talk about all that, and that money is speech. Very passionate about. We have to figure out how to change that. Money can't be speech. But we're also going to talk extensively about things like immigration, veterans issues, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, specifically from the angle of how the media affects the way that we perceive all of those giant things that affect millions or tens of millions or hundreds of millions of people. I just learned the other day that in the United States today, there are 80 million people on Medicaid. Just as a quick sidebar before I let Matt come back in. We just went through this from my mother. She's quite elderly and unfortunately has had to be in a dementia care unit. And as a part of this whole process, she can't apply for Medicaid until she spends through whatever personal wealth now. But those 80 million people that are recipients of Medicaid, that means they have to have less than $2,000 of total personal wealth. They have to sell their house, they have to sell their car, they have to cash in their 401ks. We have 80 million people in the country that are really poor. And that's kind of sad to have to say.
Yeah, it is. I think for the most part, the statistic was 62% of Americans can't afford, I think, a $500 emergency. And it would actually change their lives.
The way I heard that was those 62 million people can't afford a $500 emergency without having to take a loan. 2% of Americans
and maybe correct. That might be
don't have $500 sitting around to handle, a blown muffler system or something. Use debt to handle that.
And we've got Timu messaging us every day to spend $5. Let me get back. In the future episodes, we'll go behind the curtain. Major theme: the corporations behind the media, and we'll follow the money. We'll follow that money. We'll learn more about for-profit media, non-profit media, political think tanks, and echo chambers to be presented on. Basically saying times it basically becomes fact. And I've heard studies where can be presented to the average American with 16 other versions of the time an American can identify Coca-Cola red, like the cans. This is
one of those not too long ago. It's some sort of a global survey done, and they said that the most recognizable photograph in across the entire planet was not Christ, it was Ronald McDonald.
Wow.
Sort of like Coca-Cola.
Exactly. And again, so echo chamber and the giant conglomerates, they'll run one story and then they'll ship it out. They franchise the story and they put it on as many positions as possible. Sometimes they change the language to unique per. But in a sense that it has basically the same message. Once you see it more than once, and especially from more than one location, you believe that there must be something to it.
Can I interject a quick example?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so the echo chamber. There's a couple of big drivers for the echo chamber existing. Probably from my perspective as a person who's really passionate about how the media affects us, it used to be there was hundreds of small local newspapers around the country, and all of them employed at least a couple of reporters, journalists that went out and got stories. Now that might have been going to PTA meetings or local school board meetings or local council meetings, but there was a person there locally that did that work.
An actual journalist.
An actual journalist.
An actual journalist, people.
Journalists. But because of mergers and acquisitions and the fact that the country really doesn't have antitrust laws or anti-monopoly laws effectively anymore, they exist, but they're not really put into practice. Now what we have today is 5 giant global media conglomerates that own all of the media. And since their first driver is to make profit for their stockholders, they're not employing a lot of journalists at all those local little papers anymore. A lot of little papers are done. They were eliminated. So now we have is a few journalists at giant companies like the New York Times, the LA Times, Chicago Sun-Times, the Atlanta Journal, or the 5th one, but they take those stories that are produced by a very small number of journalists and just pass them out through all the various properties that they own. Okay, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that's a good segue because the very next part of what Asher wanted to address, which I'm reading his parts today, is the media to influence us in more ways than we consciously recognize. For us, it's important to know who is the media sources, who is at the top of the pyramid you speak of. For us, it's important to know who pours that money into the media and they spending that money for truth and journalism, or is it propaganda used for manipulating us?
A really good example of that, and we won't get into too much because we're down into our last 5 minutes. One of the giant corporations that's behind the giant corporation in energy and chemical production, unfortunately, more it's important to know that they spend a tremendous. So anytime you see a media article and it has the word libertarian in it, getting rid of public schools, getting people off of the public dole, rolling back welfare, it's very, which is their premier think tank, basically funded by, or be presented to us.
Well, I mean, when you say campaign, like part of the theories. What were some of the other things that you had as an examples of? I remember that you were.
Well, one of my favorite conspiracy theories is that the Hollywood elites are murdering babies so that they can drink their blood to live longer, or some crazy shit like that, some crazy stuff like that. But since the mother of skill is repetition, and the echo chamber says again, because somebody is paying them to do that, or they don't have enough journalists to come up with other legitimate articles to fill their 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year of 500 or more chat. It causes huge divisions between, even between a husband and a spouse, because they believe different ways. But countless examples between parents and their children where they don't even talk together anymore because they've been so warped with these media campaigns, just driving them in these. That's what I'm here for. Segregated and isolated and driven away from each other. That's what we want to do with future episodes of the show. So just as a kind of a quick wrap up, you're going to be involved in every episode of the show, even if you're not on camera. What do you want us to do with the show?
Well, I'm going to be probably referred to Matt on the mic, and you probably won't see me, but they will ask me to verify when we get into the brass tacks of truth and what's truth, because truth in a lot of ways is subjective to ideology, and this is where it comes out. Where facts can often be tested by the science, whether it's something from the past or tested in the future. So there is a difference between necessarily true, because fact is like I say, testable. So I'm going to be a little bit more of the person that when you mention something, I might have something in the can, or I might have some data knowledge of something that we've talked about that I've read, and I might have those links available. So not only to project on the screens, but also, and we're working on our website right now. So when you hear us discuss something on the show, as seeking out through the links with our show.
So very quickly, as we get here to the end of our time for this first episode, I want to say thanks for tuning in. I hope you come back and join us later. We haven't decided yet if we're going to do one episode every 2 weeks. I think that looks like a good schedule. We're probably going to do one of these Waterford Public Access cable TV shows, an episode about every 2 weeks. They'll run somewhere between an hour. Something I don't know if we did enough of here in the last 45 minutes. We absolutely want to be able to provide the viewers of the show with knowledge of how to go and find out. If you're being fed propaganda, the various media sources are rated. At least
just on what you said before I say good day to, is that I'd like to be a guest on that show, because I do have many different techniques that I do. If something seems like it may not be true, there's about 20 steps that I can teach that are teachable steps that can very quickly verify if something is a source that's worth.
Absolutely.
So
we need to do that. That's something we need, a tool we need to provide to everybody. I want to thank Matt for coming on camera. Matt is probably not going to be on camera in every episode, is because but Matt's going to be a regular part of every episode, working the camera behind the screen, showing the things that you see on the TV screens behind us, websites, links, charts, diagrams, pie charts, factual tidbits. He's going to be the one that brings all that stuff to vision during every episode, and we're going to talk to him off camera and ask him to chip in even if he's not there. So, I mean, not visual.
To John's credit, he's extremely nonpartisan. He's pretty evenly balanced. I just don't want to associate my own personal politics, particularly with the show, because I think that what John and Ash are going to provide is going to be a valuable tool for people to find the truth or the facts. So.
Yeah, and there's and if that's the only thing, they're going to air what they make profit off of. As a really quick closing